Welcome to the Creative Warriors Podcast, the heart and soul of photography. I'm Ariel, Faith, your host. Welcome back. We are welcoming back Beth Young. She is back with us, and we're going to talk a little bit about mindfulness and slowing down and just being able to be present while you're in your wherever you are, whether it's your backyard or some gorgeous epic location. So the first question I have for you today, welcome back, Beth.
Thank you.
Is how do you incorporate your personal experiences or perspectives into your photography work?
Yeah, that's a good question. How do I incorporate, what was the question again? What
your personal experiences or perspectives, which you shared with us last time, you have a lot of, which is very good.
Yeah.
Into your actual work. So
let's see. Let me think.
Pick one that is like an experience or a perspective that is deep for you and that you know has connected you to a lot of your work. So how do you connect those two things while you're working through that process?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things actually that come to mind. And one of the things that really resonates with me about photography is the connection between photography and memory. And what I mean by that is when, as a kid, I kind of mentioned that I was very creative, and a lot of that creativity kind of came out of like a fair amount of pain, if you will.
Yeah.
I'm not unique in this regard by any stretch of the imagination, but my family has history of alcoholism, of physical abuse. There's some nice, not so nice things there that I was using art and creativity to work through. And as a result, I feel like there's a lot that in my childhood I actually blocked out that I don't remember. There's a big chunks of growing up that there's a lot that I just don't remember, that I've kind of blocked out of my mind. And when I picked up a camera and I really started getting very, very serious about photography, I was amazed at how it helped me really connect with my experiences and my own memory of my experiences. To this day, I can still remember, like, how dry was the spring in 2016, or how wet was the winter in this other year, or what week of the year do these particular types of flowers bloom. Like, it really, really connects me not only to my surroundings, but it also connects in my memory a lot more, if that makes sense. I think it really has, in its own way, it's really heightened my awareness, my capacity to recall specific events and things like that. So I think that's one thing that I think is important to mention, because for me, it's tough not to remember things. It's tough to block things out of your memory. It's sometimes it can be tough to work through, those traumatic experiences. One of the other things that comes to mind for me too, and one of the things that really encouraged me as a nature photographer, and I've told this story before too, but I was really, really close with my aunt, and she was like my mother to me. She helped raise me. I spent a lot of time with her growing up, and she was just a really strong female presence in my life. But, she got very, very sick throughout, during the course of her life. I would say towards maybe the last 10, 15 years, she was very, very chronically ill. She couldn't get out of the house very much, and she loved nature so much. So I was always sharing my pictures with her. I would text her pictures or email her pictures. Eventually, she got on Instagram. It's one of the reasons actually why I got on Instagram in the first place. And it was a way to cheer her up, to uplift her. And it was through that experience that I really learned how important it is to bring nature to people who may not be able to access it, and to people who really can benefit from, healing images of nature and, just that connection in nature, even if they can't physically be in nature at the moment. And I think that really definitely guided my path as a photographer into what it is today. So
nice. I like how you have how you dug deep in that one, where the amount of people, male and female, that have gone through really horrendic. That's not, the word's not coming out of my mouth right.
Horrendous.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, yeah.
Experiences that they really don't even want to talk about, frankly. You know what I mean? There's just a point where you're done with it. But
right,
they've gone through these, and there isn't a person on the planet that hasn't gone through something, right?
Right, exactly.
We can either become what we hate, or we can become somebody who shines light on the beauty in the world. And I've really seen how people become one of those two things. You either become the abuser, or the person who's stuck there, or and there might be some other choices, or they become a shining light.
Yeah.
To the beauty despite it all.
Exactly.
Right? And that, I just applaud you for that, because I know personally I've had my own, trauma to overcome, and I know how the impact of any kind of creative pursuit, really, art, whether it's art, drawing, any kind, photography is a great one, because it's accessible, like you said before. Yeah. And it allows you to tap into that part of your soul that really needs to be at peace, needs to have hope. It needs those things. So the fact that you've, identify that and share that with us is really great. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it's a choice, right? I mean, you could choose to be miserable, or you could choose to look through, you could choose to look in the rearview mirror too, or you could look through the windshield, right?
Right.
I choose to look through the windshield, right?
Yeah.
In what direction do I want to go, and how do I want to, make my life better, live my life to the fullest, and also hopefully in a really small way, try to benefit other people too.
Yeah.
That's really, really important. But again, it's a choice. So
clarify something for me before I ask the next question, because you work as an architect still, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah.
So is that a full-time?
Full-time plus.
Okay. Yeah. Which is how that field is.
Yes.
A normal week is 50 to 60 hours. That's how it was when I worked in that in an office.
Yes.
I now work. Yes. Now I'm my own boss. So my boss is really nice. If I want to go on a walk, she lets me.
That's awesome. I love that.
If I want to take a week off, I just ask and she says yes. It's just great. I love it.
That's great. That's great.
In terms of your photography and do you work as a business with the photography? I mean, is it a business or not really?
It's kind of a business. I would say, my career in architecture is definitely takes up a large amount of my time and energy. To your point, it is, I work for a national firm. I have a leadership position within that.
It's a demanding field too.
It is a very demanding field. I do a lot of, sales, business development. I manage a large office. So my day job, it takes up a lot of my time and energy. But I would say I have to make time for photography. It is my creative outlet. It is my happy place. If I go too long without doing anything photography related, whether it's getting out and shooting, whether it's even sitting down and post-processing or writing something or sharing something, I get really grouchy. I get really, really grouchy. And people can see it, right? So I think I've been at my company long enough to where everyone knows what I do in my free time. And they also know that I need that to be a happy, fulfilled, well-rounded person that can excel at, that can excel at their day job, right? So, I've kind of gotten to the point where, I'm planning trips, I'm planning photography outings, I'm doing a little bit of teaching, a little bit of workshops, and, I just be sure that those things go on my calendar. I make the time for those things to happen, and I can't let anything else, kind of get in the way of that. And architecture is hard because it's a client-facing profession. So, and as such, your time is not always your own.
Absolutely.
Yes. Your clients can say, "Oh, I'm changing the scope of this project," or "I'm changing the schedule," and you have to be very nimble and adaptable to that. And sometimes it could be a struggle to carve out that photography time and that creative time with the demands that your clients have on you. So I do photography as a business as much as I am able to do. I know that if, at that time when I feel ready to make that jump from the corporate world into photography, which I know is going to happen for me, I can very easily make that a full-time thing. I don't see any issues with me doing that. I think I've laid some good track. And, I think that at such time when my career and my day job are getting, quote unquote, more in the way of my photography, that might be the time that I have to make a choice. I have to make a choice of, if it gets harder to balance those two things, I'm going to eventually have to make a choice. But right now, it's working for me okay. But yeah, it is a struggle. It is a struggle.
Yeah, that leads really well to this question, because you had talked before about how in the creative process, you have to really let yourself kind of like sit in it, right? You have to be aware and mindful, whatever word you want to use, slow down, be present in that space. So how do you stay with all of the things? And trust me, as a person in the field and who understands the field, I know how mind-consuming design problems can be. I mean, it can sometimes I would wake up at 3 a.m. and I would solve some problem that,
yes,
we were banging our heads against the wall for 3 days on, it's weird how that works.
Yeah.
So how do you stay when you're out in nature? What have you done to help you kind of take all that anxiety and stress, and because it's heavy, that you could take with you out there, or you can let it go and not bring it. So what have you done personally to kind of allow yourself to just be present when you're out and the world is beautiful?
I think I'm pretty good at compartmentalizing things. I know that's not a very great answer to that question, but
it's a great answer.
Yeah. And for me, it's about putting boundaries and guardrails around my professional architecture life, right? And having protective boundaries around my photography life. But I will say, like, as soon as I'm jumping in the truck to go somewhere, or as soon as I'm got my bag on my back and I'm walking to a subject or a location, like, it's very quickly, I get very in the moment of what I'm doing, So I'm not sure if I'm answering that question so great, but
no, you are. Yeah. And I completely understand that, because that's very much how I am. But
yeah,
I wasn't always compartmentalized, right? I didn't always know how to do that. So is that something you kind of always were able to do, or is it something you learned to do?
I think I had to learn to do it. I really do. And it's hard, because as women, we're always feeling like, oh, if I'm ignoring this, I'm going to let something slip through the cracks, and I have to keep all the balls in the air at all times. But, you just have to learn that if you step away from certain things, the world is going to keep spinning. You would be surprised. Yes, people can actually figure things out. I think I learned this during one of my vacations, right? And I put my out of office on, and it was a time when I'm like, I am not going to check email. I'm not going to answer the phone. I'm not going to do anything. And you will be surprised. As soon as people see that out of office come back to them, they have a way of figuring things out on their own. Like, you don't have to be there to fix everything. And so and people know that they can reach out to me if it's really something that they absolutely have to, like if it's an emergency. But 9 times out of 10, the world's going to keep spinning and people are going to figure stuff out. But I think, kind of getting into that mindset and getting into that, I guess, flow state, if you will, it's really comes down to, it's not about going out and getting quote unquote trophy shots, right? It's about more the experience of being out in nature, more the experience of being out with your camera and capturing things, whether you get a great shot or not, no longer becomes the point. The point is more about the journey and the experience. And I think that's definitely true for me. That hasn't always been true. Obviously, when I was shooting with that Rebel, I was all about, I have to go out and I have to get this big landscape and the sky's got to be awesome. And,
or I'm going home. No.
Yeah, or I'm going home and I'm going to be really upset because I didn't come back with anything. But over time, it definitely becomes more about that journey and the experience, more about, the end result or that trophy shot, if you will. And I think if you're being mindful, like I said before, of all the sensory experiences, not just what you're seeing, but being open to what you're hearing and smelling and touching and feeling and seeing, I think that definitely helps get you into that flow state where you really are connecting with nature. It isn't just about getting the shot. Again, it's more about that experience, but it's engaging all of your senses in that experience.
I think there's a point, and I don't know what point it is. I don't know at what point the switch flips. But there's a point that I've seen where, when you're starting and you accumulate all these images, and you're looking for those great ones, right? Yeah. And then there's a point where your gallery gets really huge and you have thousands. You haven't even really culled through all of them. So right. It becomes less and less about the image, or even when you're in that space, you're not as trigger happy with the camera, right? Because you don't need 1,000 pictures. You just need a couple that are representing whatever you're feeling at that moment or whatever you're attracted to or whatever. So even the journey becomes your ability to sit and just enjoy it increases because you're not. I don't have to capture all these pictures, every minute of that moment, Yeah. So I think there's a point, I don't know exactly where that, and it might be different with everyone, but that's kind of what I'm hearing, that it's much more about the fun of it.
Right.
Yeah,
I think as your portfolio grows, it reduces some of the pressure, right?
Yeah.
To always come back with quote unquote shots that you feel are worth sharing with the world. Honestly, Ariel, I'm sitting on hundreds of shots that I've never even shared yet. I'll share them when I feel ready to share them. But honestly, like if I took the rest of the year off, I would have enough content to share for months, probably. So, yeah. I think it's, for me, sharing images, it's partly about like, what is the message, or what is the story, or what does the caption say? Are you in that mindset to be ready to share that images? I have images that I feel like are really deeply personal to me that I have trouble sharing because it's like, I don't know how they're going to be received, but that's something I'm working on getting over. Like if I feel like expressing something and I feel like sharing something, just share it. Don't get hung up on how well is it going to do. Even if it resonates with one person, that is important enough. And even if it just resonates with you, that's important enough too. So
yeah, I hear that a lot from photographers that have kind of gotten beyond the need for others to like their work. There's there's another switch, right? That just kind of happens where it becomes more about it. I know it resonated with me, and I know that and unfortunately with the algorithms the way they are, it may never, I have no idea who's even seeing anything you put out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think years ago it was a little bit it was more fun, frankly, than it is now. Because now I get sucked down these war holes of like, wasteless stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, stop,
put
it down.
Yeah. I do miss the chronological.
Yeah. I mean,
Instagram.
I liked Instagram much better many years ago.
Me too.
It was fun. But anyway, it is what it is. But I think still sharing to whatever extent we do, even though we may never know it, right? That it impacted someone.
Yeah.
Even for a moment.
Yeah.
It brightened their day. It made them smile.
Yes.
That's it. That's all that's good. Right?
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. I love that. Yeah. Really, that's the most important thing, right? Does it make you happy? Does it express something that you want to say? And maybe it resonates with one person, and that's good enough.
So what would you say is what would you say is the role that emotions play in your photography?
Oh, I think it plays a big role. And again, it goes back to that intuition. I think it's being mindful about what you're connecting with, obviously. And I've said this a lot in the past too. I think if you really respect and admire and have reverence for your subject, and you try to convey it in a way that shows that reverence and that deep connection, it's going to connect with your audience. You're going to make more compelling images. So yeah, I think emotions play a big part of that. It's understanding and it's knowing what you're deeply drawn to and what you're deeply connected with. And even if you can't articulate it, I think it's really important. And I think honestly, it goes beyond just capturing the image. There's images that I'll sit on because I'll get home and I don't feel like I'm in the right mindset to process them in a way that will do the image justice. I really feel like I have to be in a very specific mindset to process a specific image. If I want a calming, soothing image, I need to be in kind of a calm state of mind that's more open and curious and maybe even a little playful. And then I'll also have images that are maybe, I don't shoot these as much, but, maybe more dark and dramatic, maybe more moody. I like processing images like that when I'm in a different mood, right? So I think I try to process images that convey very deeply what I was feeling when I was photographing them. That's really important to me. To me, mood and emotion are really important parts of our photography. And I think it's something that lends authenticity to our images. You can't fake, I don't know, maybe you can fake mood with AI. I don't know. Maybe you can. But, to me, it's that authenticity and conveying the experience and conveying the emotions that you were feeling when you were out in the field, when you saw this image and you were making this image. And to me, I love writing about my experiences, my excitement, when I saw a certain subject and how it got me all giddy. And, I posted something on Instagram yesterday, like, I love when dew is on grass or dew is on flowers or dew is on anything, and then you get that backlit dew. Wow. I have so much fun with that. But I love to share images like that because I get excited. I love dew, and I love even weeds. Weeds can have dew on them, and I'll photograph them. But yeah, just kind of conveying that excitement and your giddiness, like, oh my God, I just really resonate with this, and I'm excited to share this with you. And hopefully it gets people, thinking like, oh yeah, I should be looking for more dew, or maybe I should consider, photographing weeds or something. I don't know. But yeah, emotion is a big deal. It's a big deal.
Yeah. And I've heard this from many people, and I think this is a challenge for me, like personally, is to be that vulnerable in my work. I mean, I think I achieve it in some, but not in others. And or I don't share them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If I feel that I might not, so anyway, I think that's an inside thing you got to work through. Right.
Right.
But I hear a lot of times it's the more you allow yourself, and this probably is true in all forms of art, but the more you allow the emotion to drive the finished product, because post-processing is really just about getting the vision the way you feel.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's either soft or it's hard or it's it's bold.
Yeah.
Or it's, so that's a lot about the feeling of the image.
Right.
But you have to be vulnerable to do that. You have to be willing to kind of show, like, I really went through a dark period because I was having some struggles in life, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of my work was really dark during that phase. And I was like, this is interesting to me.
Yeah.
I'm doing so much more because I was always bright and perky. And then this UGG came on and it was like, it was being, even though I wasn't trying, it was coming out. And it was just very interesting to me.
You were working through something, it sounds like.
I was like, oh.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's something like with my processing style, I've literally had photographers like just email me or message me out of the blue, like criticizing, your images are too bright. They don't have enough shadows. You've taken all the shadows out. I'm always moving the black sliders to the right rather than the left, that kind of thing. Like, you don't have enough contrast. And I'm just like, I've learned to not take that personally. I'm like, that's fine. That if you don't like it, keep scrolling, right? Because this is how I like to process my image.
Sticker.
I know, if you don't like it, keep scrolling. Exactly. But yeah, I've been criticized for that. But honestly, that emotion of bright and hopeful and happy and almost ethereal and trying to convey the magic in the world is so important for me to convey. And that's something that I like to bring to my processing, even though I'm not a very technical processor. Like, I barely do anything in Photoshop. Almost everything that I do is just in Lightroom. I like using the Nick collection too. Like, I have an old decrepit version that I continue to use. I'm not a very technical post processor. You don't see me with 50 layer masks or, luminosity masks or anything like that. It's just, for me, what's important is I kind of think more about color theory and color psychology when I'm processing, and again, there's certain color combinations that I just absolutely love. I'm definitely drawn to more cooler, soother tones, but I also like those pops of bright colors with the oranges and the yellows and things like that. So it's kind of like marrying, if you will, something that's cool and soothing and calm with, some bright and hopeful stuff too, so that's what I think of when I'm processing. And I feel like color theory and color psychology has a lot of emotion attached to it too. Again, I do a lot of that stuff, just based on my own intuition and my own gut feeling. But yeah.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing. How do you think when you're balancing your busy work life with your moments? Now, you've talked about the fact that you compartmentalize it. So when you're at work, you're at work. When you're out in nature, this is my photography time, you are present, right? So you've talked a lot about that, but was there ever a time or something that is insightful from a time when you were overwhelmed with one or the other?
Yeah.
Based on external deadlines, pressures, so we all have them, but in the architectural field, those outside pressures are real. And they can be very much a pain in the neck. I've spent many of, no sleep nights trying to accomplish something for a client, right? And then they sits on their desk for 3 weeks and then
exactly.
happy, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, but we have these moments that we've had to balance. So obviously you've learned how to achieve that. It sounds like pretty well at this point in your life. But if you look back a little bit, what were some of the things that helped you, or when was a time that you really had to learn how to do that? Something that was really hard to struggle with that balance, and how you broke through and now you're much more effective. So if you could kind of share a little bit more about that, because I think that would help the audience.
Yeah, I think it's, as women, it's a lot of times it's hard for us to say no, but sometimes just learning when to say no to something. I like to say, like, if it doesn't totally blow up my skirt, I'm not going to do it. Like if it doesn't totally excite me, or if it's something that I feel is going to be a distraction or a diversion or take me away from what I'm trying to accomplish or convey in my photography, it's probably not worth my time. I think understanding what really motivates you and drives you is really key to that, right? And cutting out all the other BS out of that, right? So for me, like my quote unquote, my why, or my motivators are creating healing images, creating bright, hopeful images, anything that kind of takes me away from my why as a photographer is probably just not going to be worth my time. I've had to say no to, like, I don't know, camera club presentations if they don't, fit in my schedule. There's things even now that I actually would like to do more of. I'd like to do more writing. I'd like to publish articles. I'd like to develop more content. And I am right now kind of struggling with, how do I make time to do those things? So I don't know that I have all the answers necessarily. But yeah, I think it's being mindful about saying no and potentially turning down things. And I think it's okay to take time to reinvigorate yourself. There's been times where I put the camera down and I have not touched it in over a month. For me, a month is a long time, by the way. But sometimes I need that downtime just to kind of recollect my thoughts and reflect and not feel like I'm running around all the time. I'm not running to work, and I'm not running out in the field, and I'm not doing this, that, or the other. It's allowing yourself to take just some much needed downtime. We all need time to recharge. For some reason, it's usually in the summertime. I'll usually take about a month break from social media too. I just don't even go on it. I don't post to it. I don't engage with it. And I tell you, that works wonders, like absolute wonders. Like when you don't have that pressure to share and you don't have that pressure to engage all the time, and you're just kind of taking time for yourself, and maybe you're reading books, or maybe you're catching up on Netflix, or I don't know, whatever it is. Maybe you're listening to new kinds of music. Those things really recharge your batteries creatively. And I think it's really important to take much, much needed downtime. Don't beat yourself up if you need to do that. Don't beat yourself up for saying no to something if it doesn't fit within your schedule, or if it doesn't fit within your core values of what you're trying to do as a photographer. I know it's hard as women because we don't like to let people down. We do like to say, yes, we'll do this, and we'll do this, and we'll do this. And I think, just having those boundaries and creating those boundaries and allowing yourself that safe space to take that downtime is really, really important to us creatively. It's just as important as the practice of photography is the practice of not doing photography and taking time to recharge.
Yeah, absolutely. There's an energy level there that has to be recharged. And if you're constantly giving, you do run out if you don't.
Yeah.
It's just your like batteries if you woke up and you never ate, you'd run out of energy. That's just the way it would work. Creativity is very much the same.
Yeah.
It needs to be fed for you to have it when you want it.
Exactly. You got to recharge your batteries.
Yeah,
you really do. Because your batteries will run down, So.
Yes, they do. And it's okay. And you said you used the word permission several times there. And I think that's key. Because when you give yourself permission to say no, you give yourself permission to say, I don't have the energy today. And that's okay.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's not right or wrong. It's not good or bad. It's just today is not the day, and that's okay. So I think that's really important. And, a lot of us women beat ourselves up and we're way too hard on ourselves. And we don't do that. We don't give ourselves that permission. But I think you really hit on a very important point.
Yeah.
That's super important to say, hey, I can say no, and it's just fine. The world won't blow up.
The world is going to keep spinning, right?
It will, right.
But it's hard, I would say, like, for me, April is a really busy time of year photographically because, I'm all about like going, it's spring. I that's when I go out and photograph probably the most. I like, getting the wildflowers. I like getting the, flowery landscapes, things like that. And, in California here, there's only, at least immediate to where I photograph, there's really a good few weeks, I would say, where things are nice and green and bursting with life. And we got flowers and things like that I love to photograph. And honestly, like last weekend was what, the third weekend of April. And I was kind of like, I've got to like end the season strong. But honestly, I wasn't feeling that well. And I didn't have a lot of energy that weekend. And I just said, you know what? I'm just going to give myself permission this weekend to just stay home and focus on other things. And that was really hard for me to do because, I'm very driven and motivated to get out there at this particular time of year. But if I'm not feeling it, I'm probably not going to come back with images that I'm proud of anyway. So that's the other thing too. It's like you have to recognize that you have to be in the right mindset to get the compelling images that you want to get. And if you're not feeling it, you're probably not going to get the images that you hope to come back with. So why waste your time, right? If you're not in the right mindset, or if you're feeling low energy or other things are distracting you, go deal with those things. And photography can wait. That's the beautiful thing. It'll always be here. Our cameras will always be here. We can always pick them up again. Nature is still here. Our cameras are still here.
Weeds still grow.
Yeah, weeds still grow. Yeah. There's no dew. You can just get a little spray bottle of water or something. I don't know. But anyway.
There's ways around it, right?
There is. There's workarounds. Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're going to wrap this episode up and we're going to come back again and talk a little bit more about the inner voice. So we're going to talk more about, and we haven't talked about this yet. So it'll be interesting to see your perspective about some of those more inner doubt and some of the things that a lot of us have. So we'll talk about that when we come back.
Okay.
And we will see you again.
Great.
One more question before you go. How can people learn more about you and see your artwork?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at optimal_focus is my handle. Also, my website is optimalfocusphotography.com. And so I am starting to get into, teaching, mentoring, workshops. I have a couple of women's retreats coming up. One is in Olympic this summer, and then I have one coming up in Joshua Tree next spring. And so those are on the events tab on my website. My website needs to be updated. So please, be gracious. Be gentle with me. Yes. Thank you. And then I wanted to do a little plug because there's a organization that just got started by some female photographers called Outdoor Photo Alliance. And they are doing an all women's conference coming up in February in Colorado. And so I will be speaking at that too. So yeah. And I believe it's outdoorphotoalliance.com. I told them I would give them a plug since this is like their inaugural thing, but it's really geared towards women, giving women kind of a safe space to learn about photography and be inspired. So I'm really happy to be part of that as well.
If you enjoyed this podcast, The Creative Warriors, the female heart and soul of photography, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep the conversation going. Stay curious and have a happy artistic journey. Thank you for listening to the Creative Warriors Podcast, the female heart and soul of photography. See you next episode.